And welcome back, guys. We are going to be taking a look at the second part of our unit conversions video. In this topic, we're going to be taking a look at converting between SI and imperial units. Now, I'm sure that you can come up with a lot of examples in relation to conversions and how it relates to the real world, but one that you might not be aware of is one real famous case in history, particularly Canadian history, and that's about something called the Gimli glider. Now, I can't get into the video today, but just Google Gimli glider or go onto YouTube. It's very, very exciting. And the Gimli glider scenario, basically a plane lost or ran out of fuel midair and had to do a crash landing. Everybody survived. However, this all happened because someone converted the units incorrectly. They were in the process, the Canadian system was in the process of switching from metric to imperial, and something went wrong with the instrumentation. The people on the ground had to do a manual calculation, messed up the conversion factors, and midair plane runs out of gas. So really exciting and really interesting part of our Canadian history. Totally relates to unit conversions. So check it out when you have some time. All right, so when we're converting between units, whether we're converting between imperial units and metric or imperial and imperial, ultimately we're going to need a conversion chart. And so on your formula sheet, you have this chart, and we're going to be using this throughout the lesson to convert units. Now today we're going to be starting with imperial units, and as we go through our conversion, something that I want you to remember, we talked about in our last video, if I'm going from bigger units to smaller units, my number should get bigger. Or if I'm going from smaller units to bigger units, my number should get smaller. And so that's important for us to remember because it helps us decide if we're multiplying or dividing. Now, if I'm going from feet to inches, feet are bigger units than inches. So if I'm going from a bigger unit of feet to a smaller unit of inches, my number should get bigger. So 1 foot is 12 inches. 1 yard is 3 feet, which is also 36 inches. 1 mile is 5,280 feet, and 1 mile is 1,760 yards. We're going to be using this for the start of our video today. All right, now when it comes to converting units, what's important for us to know is that there's more than one way to do a conversion. One method that you're probably most familiar with goes back to junior high, and that's using proportional reasoning. Now, we still need our conversion chart, and we can use that conversion chart to do our conversions, but we're basically just setting up proportions. So the first thing we have to do is use our conversion factors to set up a proportion, and then we solve for our unknown by cross-multiplying and dividing. So we have a scenario here. It says, "Dear converter, I'm working on a sewing project and I need 25 meters of lace, but the lace is only sold by the yard. How much lace should I ask for? Signed, so much confusion." All right, so when we're doing a conversion, if we want to convert our 25 meters to yards, we start off by referring to our conversion chart. And so we want to go from meters to yards. And so we're going to take a look at our chart. And looking at the chart here, we have 1 meter is 1.0936 yards. We also have 1 yard is 0.9144 meters. So we can actually do either conversion. So we start off with our chart. I've chosen to use the 1.0936. So we're going to start off with those numbers, 1.0936 yards over 1 meter. And then we set up a proportion on the other side. We know that we have 25 meters and we know that we have X yards, so we put those in the proper spots. When we're setting up a proportion, our corresponding units must be in the same position in both proportions. So we have yards on top on the first fraction, we have yards on top in the second. Meters on the bottom, meters on the bottom. So one represents our proportion with our unknown, and one represents the proportion from our conversion chart. So in order to solve this equation, we're going to be cross-multiplying and dividing. So 25 times 1.0936 divided by 1. And putting that into our calculators, we're going to have 27.34 meters. So X will equal 27.34 meters. So this is one method of converting, and it's called proportional reasoning. So with proportional reasoning, we set up two fractions that are equivalent to each other, and then we solve by cross-multiplying and dividing. Now, there is another method of solving, and this is the one that I actually use more often, and it's called unit analysis. Quite often in physics, you'll see this used, and you may have seen it done in science classes as well in junior high. But using unit analysis, essentially what we're doing is we're using the units to dictate our multiplication or our division. So we're going to use the exact same question from before, dear converter, and we're converting 25 meters of lace to yards, but we're going to use a different method called unit analysis. Now I want to draw your attention to this video off to the side here. I'm not going to play it right now, but I will post it in Google Classroom. This is the video that I use in class all the time to show unit conversions. It gives three really good examples, and it uses a chart that you can use for converting. So I would really encourage you to watch this. It's a good video for unit analysis. All right, so when we're using unit analysis, basically what we're starting off with is we start off with the units that we have, and then we're going to move towards the units that we want. And we can set this up as a multiplication scenario in all cases. Now, when we set up our multiplication, we have to move from meters to yards, meaning we need to cancel our meters and introduce yards. So we do that by moving our meters to the bottom and our yards to the top so that they get introduced for the end. This piece in between comes from our conversion chart. And when we're setting up our conversion or our rate can be written as meters per yard or yards per meters, depending on what we need. And so in this case, I need yards per meter. And so I'm going to go to my conversion chart to get this. So my conversion chart is where I get these values. So taking a look at our conversion chart from before, we had 1 meter being 1.0936 yards, or 1 yard being 0.9144 meters. So we start off with what we have, that's the 25 meters. Then we go to our conversion chart and we find out that 1.0936 yards is 1 meter. And multiplying, we're going to go 25 times 1.0936 yards, and that will give me 27.34 yards. Now I'm going to be going through some unit analysis questions, or I'm going to use this method throughout the video. But again, I would really encourage you to watch the How to Convert Units video that I will post in Google Classroom. All right, so we're going to go through quite a few examples here. Feel free to pause the video and try some on your own. This would be great practice. Now, as we work through these, I'm going to use a variety of different methods, but I'm going to start off with the first one we've talked about, which is going from bigger units to smaller units, getting a number that's bigger, and then going from smaller units to bigger units, getting a number that's smaller. So if I'm converting from 6 feet to yards, feet are ultimately smaller than yards. So if I'm going from a smaller unit to a bigger unit, my number should get smaller. Looking at my conversion chart, I have 3 feet being equivalent to 1 yard. So 1 yard is 3 feet. So if I want to go from feet to yards, I want my number to get smaller, I'm going to divide by 3. So 6 divided by 3 is 2 yards. For the next one, I'm going from inches to feet. There are 12 inches in 1 foot. Inches are smaller than feet, so if I'm going from a smaller unit to a bigger unit, my number gets smaller. I'm going to divide by 12. So 144 divided by 12 will give me 12 feet. For the next example, I have 5 yards converting to feet. Yards are bigger than feet, so if I'm going from a bigger unit to a smaller unit, my number should get bigger. So I'll be multiplying by 3, gives me 15 feet. And the next example, I've got 3 yards to inches. Yards are bigger than inches, and looking at my chart, there are 36 inches in a yard. So I'm going to multiply by 36, gives me 108 inches. Now, if that method isn't working for you, we can use the unit analysis or the proportional reasoning. So moving on to the next examples. For these examples here, I'm going to use proportional reasoning. So for the first question here, I have 10 feet converting to yards. So I have 10 feet, X amount of yards. And looking at my chart, I have 1 yard is 3 feet. So I'm going to have 3 feet to 1 yard. And cross multiplying and dividing, I'm going to have 1 times 10 divided by 3, which is 3 1/3 or 3.3 yards. All right. Moving on to the next example, I've got 66 inches converting to feet. Well, there are 12 inches in a foot, so I'll set up my proportion. 66 inches divided by x feet equals 12 inches per 1 foot. So cross multiplying, I'm going to have 1 times 66 divided by 12 will give me 5.5 feet. All right, now we're going to look at a couple more examples here, and these ones are sometimes a little bit trickier when we start working with them, and that's because we're having to convert into multiple units. So for our last two questions on this slide, we're going to convert from feet to yards and feet. And I'm going to go back to using that concept of bigger to smaller, bigger, and smaller to bigger, smaller. So for the first question, we're going from 17 feet to yards and feet. Well, first of all, if I'm going from feet to yards, this is a smaller unit going to a bigger unit, my number should get smaller. There's 3 feet in a yard, so I'm going to divide by 3 feet per yard. And when I do that on my calculator, I'm going to get 5.6666 and so on repeating. So I'll show you that on the calculator here. We're going to take 17 and divide by 3. And that gives me 5.6 repeating. Now that tells me that there are 5 yards and a certain number of feet afterwards, 0.666666 yards. We want to convert that to feet. So we're going to subtract the 5 that we have already used, and we're going to figure out what 0.66 of a yard is in feet. So we're going to take that number and multiply by 3, and that gives us 2 feet. So 5 yards and 2 feet represent 17 feet. And now if we wanted to check this on our calculator, 5 times 3 is 15, so we have 15 feet plus 2 feet gives us 17 feet. So it works when we work backwards. All right, taking a look at our last example here, we have 135 inches and we want to convert that to yards, feet, and inches. So the first thing we're going to do is convert it from inches to yards. So we're going to divide by 36 because there's 36 inches per yard. On our calculator, 135 divided by 36 gives us 3.75. So that means 3.75 yards. Now we're going to take away the 3 that we've already used, and that leaves us with 0.75 of a yard. We want to convert that to feet. So 0.75 of a yard times 3 feet per yard gives us 2.25 feet. And once we've subtracted the 2, that leaves us with 0.25 of a foot. We want to figure out how many inches that is. So 0.25 times 12 inches per foot gives us 3 feet or 3 inches. Now again, sometimes when we're working through it this way, it's difficult to see how everything fits together. So we can always check by working backwards. We have 3 yards times 36 yards, or times 36 inches in a yard is 108 inches. 2 feet times 12 inches is 24. And if we add 108 plus 24 plus 3, we get 135 inches. All right, so application number 1, we have a fence around a rectangular field. It's 14 yards long and 2 feet wide. The fencing material costs $1.60 per foot, and we want to know how much you would have to pay for your fencing. So we start by setting up our rectangular field and labeling our sides. So we have 14 yards, 2 feet, 14 yards, and 2 feet. Now our cost is $1.60 per foot, so that means we want to put all of our measurements into feet. So converting 14 yards to feet, I'm going to use unit analysis this time. Based on our conversion chart, we know that there are 3 feet in a yard, so 1 yard times 3 feet per 1 yard will give us 14 times 3, which is 42 feet. So relabeling our diagram, we're going to label our 14 yards as 42 feet. From there, we can get our total measurement. So 42 plus 42 plus 2 plus 2 gives us a total measurement of 88 feet. And 88 feet at $1.60 per foot will give us $140.80. All right, moving on to the next example. The rental price for a truck includes a charge of $70 per day plus $1.32 per mile driven. And the question says, what is the charge for 1 day for a truck traveling 15 miles and 1,056 yards? Well, our charge is per mile, so we want to convert everything to miles. So starting off, we have 15 miles already. We want to convert the 1,056 yards to miles. And so using our conversion chart, we know that there are 1,760 yards per mile. I'll do this one using proportional reasoning. So we have 1,056 yards all over X miles equals 1,760 yards over 1 mile. Now to solve this, we're going to cross multiply and divide. So 1 times 1,056 divided by 1,760 gives us X equals 0.6 miles. So our total distance traveled is 15.6 miles, and we're being charged $1.32 per mile. So 15.6 times $1.32 per mile is $20.59. Now we get 20.592, but when we're dealing with money, we round to the nearest hundredth. Now, after that, we know that we're also paying a $70 per day charge. So we're going to add the $70, and that gives us a total cost of $90.59. All right, moving on to our third application. The floor of a house measures 12 feet 9 inches by 17 feet 4 inches, and we're being asked what the cost will be to put the trim around the outer edge if the trim costs $4.92 per foot. So again, we're dealing with a measurement problem. We're going to set up our diagram. We have 12 feet 9 inches and 17 feet 4 inches. And again, your diagram does not have to be to scale. We want to know how much it's going to cost to put the trim around the outer edge. We're looking at a cost per foot, so we want to convert these to feet. So 12 foot 9 inches, 9 inches divided by 12 inches per foot is 0.75 feet. And 4 inches divided by 12 inches per foot is 0.0333 or 1/3. So writing out these measurements, we have 12.75 feet times 2 and 17 1/3 feet times 2. When we total that all up, we're going to have 60.17 feet. Let's do those on the calculator. So if we have any repeating decimals, we don't have to worry about rounding errors. 12.75, actually I'll back that up. We'll have 4 divided by 12 was the 0.3 repeating, plus 17, that's 17.33 times 2 of those, plus 12.75 and 12.75 gives us 60.166666 and so on. Now, that gives us 60.17 feet. If we were to go to the hardware store and ask for 60.16666 repeating feet, they probably are going to look at us a little bit strange. So we probably are going to have to walk into that hardware store and ask for 61 feet at $4.92 per foot. So 61 feet times $4.92 per foot will cost us $300.12. Now, if we had used the exact measurement of 60.17, it would have cost about $296. But when we're dealing with these kinds of measurements, we're going to have to round up because we can't walk into a store realistically and ask for exactly 60.2 feet. All right, moving on to some conversions between systems. When we're converting between the SI system and the Imperial system, we do the exact same thing. We're still looking at our conversion chart. We're still using proportional reasoning or unit analysis. We can also use the bigger to smaller concept, but sometimes when we're converting between systems, it's hard to know which one's bigger or smaller unless you're familiar with both systems. All right, so we're going to look at some applications again here. First question, it says the bowling lane is approximately 19 meters long, and we're asked to find the measurement to the nearest foot. So using unit analysis, I have 19 meters, and I want to convert that to feet. So I multiply by meters on the bottom, feet on top, and I want to end with feet. So looking at my conversion chart, I know that looking at my conversion chart, I see that there are 3.2808 feet per 1 meter. So I'm going to put the 3.2808 with the feet and 1 meter. So on my calculator, I'm going to go 19 times 3.2808 divided by 1 is going to give me 62.3 feet. So to the nearest foot is 62 feet. Looking at our next question, it says, after meeting in Emerson, Manitoba, Hannah drove 62 miles south and Farron drove 98 kilometers north. Who drove further? So in this particular case, we're just comparing two values. So once we have them both in the same units, we'll know which one was further. So I'm choosing to convert miles to kilometers just because I understand kilometers better. And I'll start off by using my conversion chart. So again, I'm going to use unit analysis. When we're doing unit analysis, we start off with the units that we have. We introduce the units that we want, which is kilometers, and then we set up our conversion chart. We want to get rid of miles, we want to introduce kilometers, and then this number here comes from our chart. And on our chart, we know that there are 0.6214 miles per 1 kilometer. So from our conversion chart, we have 1 kilometer is 0.6214 miles. So again, this is coming from our conversion chart. So when I'm multiplying, it's going to be 62 times 1 divided by 0.6214 gives me 99 kilometers. So if Hannah drove 62 miles south, and that corresponds to 99 kilometers, and Farron drove 98 kilometers north, Hannah has driven further. Again, if you wanted to double check this, you could also convert from kilometers to miles. You'd have miles equating to about 60.9 or 61 miles. And so we would still come up with Hannah driving further. All right, taking a look at our next example. Alex is 6 feet 2 inches tall, and he has to list his height on his driver's license application in centimeters. So in order to list it in centimeters, we're going to have to convert 6 feet 2 inches tall to centimeters. Now, when we have these 2 inches, these two measurements, these two imperial measurements, we're going to have to first put them both into the same units and then convert to centimeters. Now, inches converts really well to centimeters, so I'm going to convert my feet to inches. So 6 feet times 12 inches per foot will give me 72 inches plus the 2 inches that we have to add to that, and we have 74 inches. Now, if we want to convert from inches to centimeters, we can go to our conversion chart, 74 inches. We want to get rid of inches and introduce centimeters. Looking at our conversion chart, there are 2.54 centimeters per 1 inch. So 74 times 2.54 gives me 187.96 centimeters. All right, now I don't know about you, but a common problem that I see once in a while, we've even seen it in the hat, is when a truck driver doesn't know the right height to get under a bridge. And so if you look on Google Images, there's tons of pictures out there about trucks that have not made it under the bridge. And all of this just comes to knowing their height and knowing their conversions. So a truck driver knows that our semi-trailer is 3.5 meters high. The support beams on a bridge are 11 feet 9 inches high. And our question is, will the vehicle fit under the bridge? All right, so let's find out. We're going to convert feet to meters. So we have 11 feet 9 inches high. 9 inches is 0.75 feet. So 9 divided by 12 inches per foot is 0.75 feet. So that gives us 11.75 feet. And we want to convert that to meters. And we know that there is 1 meter per 3.2808 feet. So 11.75 times 1 divided by 3.2808 gives us 3.58 meters. So her semi-trailer is 3.5 meters high. The bridge is 3.58 meters high. So she's going to make it under, but just barely. All right, now one more example we're going to look at here, and this is converting speed. This one we have to do if we're crossing the border. We want to switch. Canadians are kilometers per hour. We switch to the American side. We've got miles per hour. Don't want to get caught with a speeding ticket, so it's important you know how to convert. So a plane is traveling at 510 miles per hour. We want to know to the nearest whole number the speedometer reading in kilometers per hour. Now, luckily, most of us have those dual display vehicles. We don't have to worry about the conversion so much. But if that speedometer went out, we need to know that we can convert and justify why we don't need that speeding ticket. All right, so a plane is traveling at 510 miles per hour. So we start off with our 510 miles per hour. On our conversion chart, we have 1.6093 kilometers per hour. So times 1.6093 kilometers per 1 mile. So not kilometers per hour, kilometers per mile. Notice that my miles are canceling and I'm introducing kilometers. So 510 times 1.6093 gives me 820.743 kilometers per hour, or to the nearest whole number is 821 kilometers per hour. Now I'm going to give you one more challenge here at the end. I'm not going to give you the answer today. I might give it to you on Monday in class. I'm going to ask you, which is faster, 20 meters per second or 80 kilometers per hour? Stay tuned. You'll find out on Monday. Have a great day. We'll see you soon. All right, so let's take a look at some applications of this. First application, it says a fence around a rectangular field is 14 yards long and 2 feet wide. Fencing material costs $1.60 per foot. How much would you pay for your fencing? Well, the first thing we need to do is get all of our units into the same unit. We have 14 yards long and 2 feet wide. It might help to draw a diagram. So we've got a rectangular field, and we know that one side is 14 yards, 14 yards. Oh my God. Oh, good thing I can pause this. You know, I can delete it. I'll get it out of there. Ah, I've learned how to edit with screaming kids. In case you missed that, that was Mr. Heinrich scaring me during this video.